Well, Brian, another comeback victory for Manchester United. 10th time this season they've come from behind to win. Sort of sums them up. Maybe a couple of questions at time defensively, but just scintillating up front.
Yeah, when they get going, first half was, I suppose by their standards, it was tame enough. But with those players of real technical ability and quality on the pitch, there's always the potential for them to score goals. And I think you said it at half time that they wouldn't be, just before half time, they wouldn't be over worried about being behind, because they've done it so often. They've retrieved situations and they have the confidence in each other that they can produce those moments, and they certainly upped the tempo a bit in the second half. We didn't see much of McTominay, I felt, in the first half. Second half he was more involved, and they worked those positions to make the chances and get themselves back into the game. They were probably a bit fortunate in the style of the penalty, and the foul by Luiz was rather stupid, to say the least. But once they got into that position, kind of felt that they just take the momentum and go on and win the game, and that's how it went ultimately.
Is that down to character? Is that, you look at that squad and say the heads don't drop when things aren't going their way, actually they stick together, that they come back so often?
I think there's characters involved in it, but when you combine quality with character, and I think there's good spirit about them. But you can have a lot of character, but you mightn't have the players who are good enough. If you're playing against an opposition who get a lead against you, and they can sit in and defend. How often we see it in football, teams get a lead, probably surprising lead, against a team who are ranked above them, or they wouldn't feel that they're going to dominate possession. But then they get dig in and they feel comfortable in the match and they're dangerous on the counter-attack. Manchester United seem to be able to overcome that on a regular basis. And that's because they've got players with real ability, whether it's the pace of Rashford, the invention of Greenwood when he gets into good positions in the final third, the ability to get a shot away, as we saw today, the second goal, the cleverness of Fernandes and his technical ability, Pogba's all-round strength and creativity, I suppose, on the ball as well. And then you bring on a Cavani, who was a bit of a genius in his own right. He might be an ageing genius, but he still has it. So, very few teams have that all-around ability in their attacking part of the pitch. So that's why they've the confidence in each other to put aside conceding a goal like they did today, which is a bad defensive goal. So many players made mistakes in the build-up to the goal. Ultimately, the last mistake was Lindelof's. He should have dealt with it. But they know they have this ability to create chances and score goals, and that proved to be the case as the game went on.
A month ago, Mason Greenwood had 1 Premier League goal to his name. He's now 5 in his last 5 Premier League matches. Still such a young player. I think he's now scored more goals as a teenager than any other Manchester United player, even more than Wayne Rooney had scored at the club. What do you make of his season so far?
Well, if you're right on those statistics, that's some achievement for a boy, given the quality of Manchester United players and the young players who've got into the team in the past. I think, if he's ahead of George Best, even that's something very remarkable. And Rooney, who got into the Everton team as a boy. What do I make of his season? I think he's had, as the season has gone on, it's got better for him. I think the earlier part of the season, it just wasn't quite happening for him. There was a lot of competition for the positions. He's the youngest of them in that group, when it's Martial, Anthony Martial, Rashford and himself competing for those. Like, if you put Fernandes in, Fernandes has to play. So there was 3 for 2 and you were getting shuffled around a little bit. Martial playing the central position, Daniel James doing all right as well, and then they add Cavani to it. Now, Cavani didn't get going for a long time, but I suppose he didn't take his chances initially early in the season, so he becomes a bit of an add-on player and a midweek player in the cup competitions and the Europa League. But then he hits a bit of form and you see his quality again and his ability to take chances, run with the ball. He's got stronger. I mean, we saw him in the match with Leeds a few weeks ago playing through the centre position, which is probably the position they hope that eventually he will be the centre forward. And he didn't do well that day. He was out muscled, he was pushed off the ball a bit. And you see today he's back on the right wing, the right side of the attackers. I think that's his best position currently, similar to Rashford, until he gets his physical strength. Rashford has played through the middle. He doesn't look as good in there either as he does playing off the wide right or the wide left. And you see what Cavani brings to it. He brings a presence, he brings a nous to it, he brings that movement, experience, and that movement, and the overall finishing as well. So Cavani is the best one for that position at the moment. But there's a place for Greenwood without a doubt in among that forward line, but maybe not always as the starter.
There's a lot of debate about where Manchester United are right now then, and the amount of progress they've made this season, and yourself and Damien Delaney have had a good go at it over the last few weeks as well. Could you play, and maybe this gets to the heart of that debate when you're trying to pick a United team, could you play Cavani through the middle, Rashford on the left, Greenwood on the right, Fernandes just behind, and Pogba alongside one of McTominay and Fred?
Well, that's the ongoing debate. And when we were talking about it with Damien, I mean, the initial debate took off because Damien said he didn't find them entertaining. And I think we had a bit of a debate about that. I mean, I find Manchester United always entertaining because it's interesting, and there's this type of debate about the defence and how good they are. Are they making progress at all? I think the problem they have is that neither McTominay or Fred are an out-and-out holding central midfield player that you can rely on to dictate the game from that position and protect the pair of centre-backs that are most frequently played, Lindelof and Maguire, if you want your full-backs to be attacking full-backs as well. And that's the core problem. When you play Pogba there, so you're playing, if you talk about it as in terms of two number sixes, I don't like talking about those numbers because people may not always understand exactly what the tactical nuance is of that. But if it's about Pogba playing beside McTominay or Fred, the problem is that he's not disciplined in that position. He wanders off, he drifts to the left, he drifts forward, and doesn't always see the immediate urgency to get back into position there, and that's the problem for Manchester United. So what Solskjaer has taken to do to make the most effective, he plays McTominay and Fred. Matic used to be in the picture, but he's less so now. And then he gets Pogba on the left-hand side, and it's either Greenwood or Rashford plays, or some combination. Maybe Cavani doesn't play so much as we saw today. And I think that will remain the situation till the end of this season. Then it's all up in the air.
And is that the key to unlocking that next step for next season?
I would think so. And obviously the option, I mean, Bali is a good option in centre-back, but he's an unreliable option because of his fitness. I always think Lindelof does all right, but then you see today, little mistakes in this game today, the lack of, I suppose, been really, ruthless in his defending on that little moment in the game today could have cost them dearly against better opposition. I mean, the reality of this season is they're going to finish second in the league and be about to win the Europa League against Villarreal, which won't be a pushover for them. But they're better. They've better quality, I would think, all around the pitch than Villarreal, who are a well organised, disciplined team whose manager knows his way around, making it awkward for better opposition than the resources Villarreal have. And then it's about, can Manchester United push on? Will Paul Pogba stay? Will Cavani be still there? Who do they sign? What players are going to be available? Who's going to be the goalkeeper next season? De Gea, excellent the other night against Roma, will hardly want to stick around if he's a second choice for next season. Henderson looks like he's making a good fist of it at the moment. But, it's again that one or two key signs. We've seen the difference that Diaz has made for Manchester City this season, and the difference Virgil van Dijk made for Liverpool 2 previous seasons. Is there someone out there that Manchester United could sign that's going to make that difference, and the player in the middle of the field that's going to make the difference that Fred and McTominay can't quite make? I think they're the key questions.
Do they need the two of them, or does one Diaz, Van Dijk type figure mean that actually the defence doesn't need as much protection, so you could play a McTominay and Pogba?
I don't know the answer to that. I wouldn't claim to know the answer to that. But one player can make a sensational difference to a lot of teams. But then again, they do need to keep Cavani or get another player, because I as I've said previously, I don't think Martial, Rashford or Greenwood occupy that centre forward position. I wouldn't even say efficiently enough. I'd say they just don't have the real presence and the wherewithal to do it in the way Manchester United need someone to do. But you could say the same thing about Chelsea or Manchester City, and they've managed to make up for that with the ability of the other players and the system they play. But in Manchester United's case, I think they need a main man centre forward to add to what they have, or else keep Edison Cavani.
Just a brief mention of Aston Villa. They shot themselves in the foot really at the start of the second half. You could tell from the reaction of his teammates how annoyed they were about what Douglas Luiz did with that foul on Paul Pogba. It was just senseless.
Yeah, given he's had a good steady season. He's played nearly every game. He's been reliable in there. The combination with him and McGinn have been very, very solid. Luiz just sits around, minds the back four. McGinn gives him a bit of help, but gets on, tries to support the front and create chances. But it was senseless stuff. I mean, he's waiting on the foul, the big man. He let him away with the first one in that Pogba was off balance after the initial tackle and got up and stayed on the ball. But then he went for another bite for it to try and win the ball, and he gave Pogba the opportunity to put his body across, feel the leg coming in, and goes to ground. And it tore Villa apart a bit, but look, still only made it 1-1, but the flow of the game and the momentum of the game was now with Manchester United, and when they get into that mood, they're a very good side.
Were you as outraged as everybody else at Sergio Aguero's panenka last night?
Well, I wasn't watching the match at the time. At the time, I was down watching St Patrick's Athletic and Shamrock Rovers, and I was probably a bit more outraged at the outcome of that game. Shamrock Rovers scored in the last minute, a great goal by Danny Mandrew, and it was a really good match. But when I saw it, I was surprised, but I didn't have much sympathy for Aguero, because I always think there's a bit of that which is a bit insulting and almost abusive on the goalkeepers, who are in a very difficult position facing penalty kicks, and they are trying to read the mind of the taker. They're trying to remember the information they were given during the week in relation to the opposition getting the penalty and who might take it and where they might place it, and then the taker can embarrass them by doing the panenka and waiting on the goalkeeper move and chip it through the middle. So I don't have the sympathy for Aguero that maybe some people would have.
I'm sure there were a few Brian Kerr players during the years that tried an old panenka.
I can't actually remember. I don't think it'd come into fashion when I was managing. We got very few penalties with the Faroes. In fact, I don't think we got a penalty with the Faroe Islands in my number of games there. So no, I don't think I've ever had to have a go with a fella.
You'll probably tell me you were in Belgrade the night the first panenka ever happened.
I wasn't there. I mean, I heard the lads talking earlier today before we got on the air about the night of the Alan McLoughlin goal. Alan, who sadly passed away this week at such a young age. And I was in Belfast that night for that match. I heard Donald Fannell talking about it with Joe, and about how few people were there, but I was there that night and sitting on my hands, not saying too much. But no, I wasn't there the night of the panenka. But it was a moment yesterday I'm sure Aguero will regret, because I think it's going to affect his chances getting on the pitch over the remainder of the season. Seriously, I think he's probably done himself out an appearance or two before the end of the season.
The race for the top four this week is going to be a huge week, and a lot of it may be influenced by what Ole Gunnar Solskjaer does, because United have Leicester on Tuesday night, Liverpool on Thursday night, West Ham are in action later today. Do you see either West Ham or Liverpool being able to break in between Chelsea and Leicester?
Well, I don't see them making the headway on Chelsea. I think Leicester have now become the team most vulnerable again, and obviously, the situation with the loss to Newcastle the other night and the injury to Johnny Evans, and also the fact that the cup final, I mean, which is the most important match for Leicester? It's an interesting debate now. What would be a great season for Leicester? Make the Champions League or win a cup? You know, like for Leicester to win the FA Cup. I mean, having won the Premier League a few years back was extraordinary. But this year, given the dominance of Manchester City and Chelsea, really, on the FA Cup in recent years, for Leicester to win it would be a marvellous achievement. But they as players, how would the manager feel if they won the Cup and don't make the top four this year and end up playing the Europa League again next season? He'd probably be disappointed. But at the end of the day, on his CV, if he wins the Cup, it would add to his reputation, which is really, really high at the moment, Brendan Rodgers. So the game on Tuesday night with Manchester United is a massive game for them. I would think they're under threat from Liverpool and the others, and West Ham. And what team Manchester United put out against Leicester on Tuesday night, it's going to be very interesting, and other clubs might be looking at that selection that Solskjaer goes with and say and might be prepared to have a bit of a whinge after if he doesn't put out a strong team and beat Leicester.
Just to finish up, you mentioned Alan McLoughlin. Alan worked with us for a lot of years and off the ball on co-commentary duty, and such a sad time this week at such a young age of 54. Talk to us about that night, his greatest night then, the night of that goal against Northern Ireland, because as you mentioned, they were talking on the radio how they reckon there was about 4 Irish supporters there. Obviously there was a few more of you who would slide in.
Well, I heard him saying the figure today that the FAI got 400 tickets, but I don't know if they gave them out. I actually got tickets that night. I got them from a great friend of mine, Jim Emery, who was the chief scout for Linfield, and he was a very good friend of mine. And I did Jim 1 or 2 favours over the years and recommending players to him that went from here, including the likes of Pat Fenlon, and not that you needed to have a great eye to spot that Pat Fenlon might be a good player for Linfield. But, you know, I talked to Jim about the potential of players from here going and playing. Others did, the Desi Gorman and Martin Bailey, and there was a couple more. But, yeah, and I met Jim before the game, remember the game well, the game with a friend of mine. It was an extraordinary night, and there was a lot of bitterness in the air, and you certainly wouldn't have been, you know, shouting and roaring in your seat or letting your accent be heard, particularly mine. And it was a very, very, very tense, nasty occasion, you'd have to say, to a degree. There was great joy at the end of it. Alan McLoughlin coming on in that atmosphere, that dreadful atmosphere it really was for a game of football. There was so much bitterness and sourness in the air. Going back probably to the previous game when we won 3-0 in Dublin, and the crowd were singing that there's only one team in Ireland, that sort of stuff. They felt the Northern Ireland football supporters felt very aggrieved about that, and Billy Bingham threw some petrol on the fire on the night. But anyway, Alan McLoughlin produced the goods with a great goal. Difficult situation, the ball broke to him, he took a touch and banged it into the net from inside the box. But, you know, I'm sure he and his family would not want to be remembered alone for that night. I think he'd want to be remembered for the good guy he was, the intelligent football player that he was. I think in this era he would have been much more irregular at a higher level of football than he was in those days, because he played in a time when football was different. There was a lot more aggression in the game. There was lots less room for intelligent footballers who saw the space and were able to break into it around the penalty area, as he did that night, to stick the ball in the net. And I think he would want to be remembered for his dedication and loyalty to clubs like Swindon, for whom he played over 100 matches, and Portsmouth, for whom he played hundreds of matches, and the other clubs that he made a contribution to, and the people that he worked with in the media as well, who all speak of him very highly. I didn't deal with Alan much, but I heard him making contributions on our programmes over the year, and he was obviously a very intelligent assessor of football, and his coaching ability was highly valued in the clubs he worked with, Portsmouth too. And it seems like he was just a great all-round guy. And I spoke with Niall Quinn, who knew him very well, and Niall had spoken to him in the last couple of weeks. I read Tony Cascarino's touching piece, I'd say, in yesterday's English Times. I thought that was a lovely piece, and Dave McKechnie's piece in the Irish Times as well, who worked with him when he did a column for the Irish Times at one time. They were all pieces that kind of put the image out there of a totally well-rounded footballer, former footballer, who had a lot more strings to his bow, and who was highly admired by those that played with him, those that worked with him, those that managed or coached with him. And I think from our point of view, we were just supporters that saw Bloke play and admired him as a player, but he was much more than that.
Yeah, a very sad loss, and he'll be sadly missed. Brian, thanks as always.
Thank you. Thanks, Nathan.